All right, we've got about 1 minute till showtime.
Awesome.
"25 seconds to hear the sound. Have a great show, everyone."
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, the topic of the show is new breakthroughs in mental health.
Okay.
Hey, Beth, we were sending the feed your way. Did you not hear it?
I did not hear the feed, no.
Oh, okay. That's weird. Let me send it back to you.
I was wondering if there's a technical error on.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to send it right back to you.
All right, thank you.
Are here to offer practical advice and share the tools you need to reclaim your physical, mental, and emotional health. Now, here is your host, Beth Shaw.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to Make America Healthy, where our goal is to educate you, empower you, and inspire you to take control of your own physical and mental health. So we've got a great topic for the show today, and that is new breakthroughs in mental health. And there are many people out there who have tried different medications, different forms of therapy. I know I myself have done many things in both of those veins, and they still really can't find relief. So the good news is there is hope. And we have two amazing guests for you today to talk about new breakthroughs in mental health. So these are some options that you might not know that even existed. And we're happy to bring you John Giordano, who has gone through an incredible life transformation from the stigma of childhood sexual trauma, homelessness, severe addiction, to being a renowned addiction expert with 36 years of sobriety. He started his own holistic treatment center, which he eventually sold for a lot of money. And he is a published author of 3 books, co-owner of the Ketamine Clinic of South Florida, inspirational speaker, and the chaplain for the North Miami Police Department. He specializes in holistic mental health and trauma recovery. And we also have Kaia Roman, who is a Silicon Valley-based entrepreneur, passionate advocate for the profound healing capabilities of psychedelic medicine. She is the co-founder of telemedicine ketamine treatment company, KetaMD, the vice president of strategy for psychoceutical bioscience, and the CEO of PR and marketing for Eclipse Communications. She was also just named the CEO of the year for the psychedelic industry. So I met both of these guests recently when I attended a conference about mental health, psychedelics, ketamine, cannabis, and many other things that used to be stigmatized in our society, but now are finding their way into mainstream and providing so much help and hope for so many people. So without further ado, I welcome both of our guests, and ladies first. So Kaia, we'll start with your background, how you got into this to this industry. You and I had lunch a few weeks ago. And congratulations again on your nomination of Psychedelic CEO of the Year.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you so much. It's great to be here chatting with you and with Dr. John, who I was able to be on a panel with at the conference where we all met. So this is just such an important conversation to have. And I think, like many people that find themselves, in some field having to do with mental health and psychedelic medicine, it usually comes from some kind of personal healing experience. So that was certainly the case for me. Like you mentioned, I am an entrepreneur. I'm based in Silicon Valley. I've started a number of businesses over the years. And one of my businesses back in 2014, I was just too early. We started an epigenetic software company. We ran out of money. Had to sell it for a loss, and I was in a real funk, depression, anxiety, you name it. So I decided to take on all the information that I'd learned from all these incredible doctors that I'd worked with and do what I called a joy plan, which.
And John, tell us about your background and how I heard you speak at the conference, and I have to say, I'm assuming you're from New York. I'm from New York too. And you are so fluent in your delivery of treating the whole body, not just one part, but also doing blood work and various tests to really get a picture of the whole person and then treat them in the totality of the mind, body, and spirit. That very much resonated with me. So I would love to hear how you got started and what you're up to.
Okay. Well, I got started, my son almost died from addiction. I almost died. My wife almost died from addiction. And I'm a recovering addict. I have now 38 years of recovery. It went up for 2 years. And I wanted to help God's kids after I learned about how it was destroying me and my family. And then
I'm just going to ask you a question because I know a lot of people in recovery, and they oftentimes think that things like ketamine, psycilsibin, ayahuasca, they have this perception that it's going to break their sobriety, with the perhaps mistaken thought that these are drugs. And I would like to just know from you, tell everybody who's listening, how is this different? Because I've met many an ayahuasca shaman who was in recovery myself.
Okay, well, it's real simple. First of all, it's about intent. If your intent is to get high with these substances, then you're relapsing. It's not a fun journey, first of all. First of all, these medicines, whether it be plant medicine or otherwise, are there to benefit humankind. And when done under the right circumstances and for the right intention, there's no such thing as relapse. What you're doing is you're preventing yourself from relapsing. You're dealing with your mental. I never met an addict that doesn't have depression and anxiety or other addictions. Now, when I first got into this with the ketamine, well, I've been doing psychedelics research with Dr. Deborah Mash, okay, who Kaia knows, she knows. And, for 23 years now with Ibogaine. And I got a real understanding of what that does, that plant medicine, how it's sacred and how it's not something just to get high with.
A lot of people go to Mexico to these Ibogaine clinics to get sober. Is that correct?
Yes. And here we had a clinic in St. Kitts for 14. As a matter of fact, I was there for 13 years with her, 14 years doing Ibogaine. And it was a research project also. And we did amino acid therapy. I included EMDR. We included group therapy. We even included, we had shamans come there. I mean, it was really, really very well done. We had a heart monitor on them for 24 hours to make sure they were appropriate for treatment. We did a toxicology test to make sure there wasn't anything on board that's going to interfere with this, okay? And then we did, when they come to the island, we did it again, blood work with them and everything to make sure they were appropriate. Then what we did, I would do a pre-interview with them to help them with their intention. Then we would put them in a bed. We put an IV in their arm in case there's any kind of event. We put a heart monitor on them. We put eye shades and a headset on them to keep them in a containment field. We would give them a test dose, wait 45 minutes, see if they tolerated, and then we would give them a full dose. And my job was, after they came out of their journey, was to help them understand what they saw in their journey. And a lot of them have what is known as a cathartic experience. They really get to understand their traumas from an intellectual point of view, not an emotional point of view. And that's what psychedelics do. Problem, I think, with the psychedelic industry now and with the addiction industry, we're not looking at people comprehensively. You know, people go in for depression and anxiety, and you heard me lecture about this. What happens if you have a low thyroid? Ketamine is not going to help your thyroid.
You know, I will say that last summer I was very, very depressed. I had been off of all antidepressant medication for the year of 2022. And I, was thinking about how am I going to leave the planet and take my dog with me. And I started taking Wellbutrin again. And then I went back to South Florida. I was in New York for the summer. I went back to South Florida, had my blood work done. It turns out my testosterone levels had dropped to 80.
That's how you heard me lecture about that.
Yeah. And when I heard you lecture, you so spoke to everything that I believe is truth and everything that also makes sense from a very scientific, clinical standpoint. Again, all these tests need to be done. I was just speaking to a doctor that I'm seeing in Scottsdale, who we had on the show from Bright Path Wellness, Diana DeGrossa. And I had my microbiome test done. And she's like, if your microbiome is off, your brain is going to be off.
That's
so
right.
there's so many baseline tests that most people are, and most doctors are not even aware of that need to be done when looking at things like depression. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I lecture internationally. I was in Taipei and with a neuroscience conference with Dr. Blum. He's the geneticist who found the addiction gene. And I was telling him about low testosterone, high testosterone, which can cause depression, anxiety, leaky gut syndrome, H. pylori, infection, hypoglycemia, closed head injuries, low thyroid. All of these things can cause depression and anxiety. We're not looking at that. Mommy left you when 3, you got a trauma, you've been molested. So that's why you have depression and anxiety. That's a part of it, okay? That's only a part. We have a body that's connected to the head, all right? If you don't believe that, just send the head to treatment, leave the body home. I mean, what are we doing? And the bottom line is what ketamine does and what ayahuasca does and all these, they put you on a path, okay? But you got to do the work. You can't keep doing these medicines and expect them to fix you. They're not going to fix you.
And I had a friend in Los Angeles who had done 40 ayahuasca journeys. And yet every time he came over to my house for a party, we would find him drunk underneath the dining room table. One day he said to me, I think I'm an alcoholic. I said, yeah, I think you should stop drinking. He finally got into recovery. But like you said, it's not one-stop shopping that, just going on an ayahuasca journey is going to make you stop drinking. However, I do know many people who did not have a problem per se with alcohol, who did a couple of ayahuasca journeys and then never had the desire to have another cocktail again.
Well, let me tell you something about that, which most people don't really realize. I've never met an alcoholic or an addict who only has one addiction. There's behavioral addictions. And most people say, well, what is an addiction anyway? How do you know I'm an addict? I said, simple. All right, I make it real simple for you. If you continue to use a substance or a behavior in spite of adverse consequences, maybe you need to take a look at that. Maybe you have a problem.
So that could be a work addiction. It could be a workout addiction,
work addiction, food
shopping.
addiction, all of that is called, we call it RDS, reward deficiency syndrome. But Dr. Blum coined that phrase. What that means is a lack of dopamine. And if you have the DRD2-ALE1 variant gene, that genetic gene, that's the main addiction gene, okay, you can have the possibility of becoming an addict, but there's such a thing as epigenetics, which can change the social environment, can change the gene expression.
Yeah, I love Dr. Bruce Lipton. I was presenting with him just before the pandemic at the yoga festival in Rishikesh. Brilliant guy.
Well, and these are things that people don't understand. Look, You have lack of spirituality, which is a foundation, I believe, in any kind of recovery that you want. I mean, religion now, I'm talking about spirituality. Learn to be kind instead of right. Do your best not to lie, cheat, or steal, or hurt yourself or other people. Reach out and help people less fortunate, things like that. Very important that we look at the whole person. We're putting Band-Aids on people. And the ketamine industry, what they're doing now is, and some of the people that are doing the take-home stuff and things like that, look, if it works for somebody, I'm okay with it. But the bottom line is, if you don't have integrative counseling, that's why we have integrative coaching. Also, we have group therapy for as long as they want to come, no charge. We want them to get well.
Well, I'm definitely making a visit to your clinic. I have not personally done ketamine, but I'm very curious about it.
Well, ketamine is a real good doorway to the subconscious mind. Remember, talk therapy, you're dealing with your software of your brain.
Yeah.
Okay. Psychedelics, you're dealing with the hard drive.
So let me ask you something on that, John. I spend a lot of time thinking about, like, who's driving the bus, and if my subconscious is driving the bus and I don't like the direction in which it is going, is there a way to change the roadmap? Can we really clear out the subconscious?
Absolutely. You can change direction at any time, but you know what? It requires work. See, we want quick fixes, okay? Yeah. I'm a martial artist. I've been doing that for over 60 years. All right, there's no quick fix. You want to learn something, you got to keep practicing at it. Most people are non-compliant and most people give up.
Well, and the same thing with, the diet industry and this 50% obesity rate that we're dealing with, and people looking for a quick fix to lose weight. People don't want to put the work in. They just don't.
But psychedelics give you that roadmap, but you got to follow it. It's like having a GPS and then you say, no, I think I'm going to go this way. I'm not going to follow that.
But I also want to caution our listeners too, this is not a call to just go get some chocolate mushrooms and start tripping. This is a serious process that requires guidance from a professional such as either one of you. Yes?
That's why we have our people are, they're CRNAs, critical care nurses that are anesthesiologists, that have been doing this for a while. And we have a psychiatrist on staff. Everyone that's on our staff have done ketamine.
Yeah, and I want to do a deep dive into your clinic in a minute, but we have Kaia's back with us.
Hi, sorry about that. I love this discussion so much because, Beth, you and I are both biohackers, and you, John, of course, the original biohacker. But, basically what we're talking about is habits. And, we get stuck in certain habits. Addiction is a habit, depression is a habit, anxiety is a habit. These are neural pathways which inform our behavior. And these are just like neurons that are clumped together in a certain formation that we revisit over and over and over again. And it's very difficult to change neural pathways. You can do it. I was saying before I got cut off that I wrote a book called The Joy Plan about neuroplasticity and how to change neural pathways through practices like mindfulness and changing your diet and getting your hormones sorted out. But this was before I ever had a psychedelic experience. And then when I learned about psychedelics, I learned that, there's so many different molecules and they're all very unique. The experience is unique, the chemical structure is unique, but they all have this similar effect on the brain where they create a burst of new neuron growth. And then it's like freshly driven snow in the brain. You have the ability to form new neural pathways much more easily than you normally would. But I'm so glad to hear, Dr. John talk about how if you seek treatment within their clinic, you're going to be doing group therapy and coaching and have support along the way and afterwards, because you could just go back to those same old habits and they could be even more strongly reinforced after the psychedelic. So it's really about doing it within the container with all the different preparation, experience, and then integration support to create those new neural pathways that you want.
And I know for myself, I've done ayahuasca several times. In fact, I'm preparing to go to Costa Rica for a week-long retreat that includes ayahuasca as part of an 8-week transformational program. that sometimes just doing kind of like a one-off ceremony is not going to make a huge shift, which is why I chose this time to go on a more structured program, so that there are tools around it to help the integration and help keep those behaviors, the good ones, of course, reinforced with your own new tools that you have in your tool basket. I want to jump topic for a minute because I got to spend a lot of time with people from maps.org when I was in New York City. I got to tour some of the facilities through NYU where they were doing the clinical trials, predominantly for veterans and other people that they were helping with treatment-resistant depression, end-of-life fears. And I think the work that Rick Doblin and his crew have done just in terms of research around psilocybin, MDMA, has been amazing. If someone is listening to this show and they're like, I really want to walk down this path, but I need a roadmap, what would both of you suggest?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So a roadmap, as in,
like, where do you get started? I mean, there's a ketamine clinic,
yes,
on every corner here in South Florida now.
Okay,
yes.
I can help.
So, if you're in the United States, and I'll take a stab at this, John, and then I'll pass it to you. If you're in the United States, ketamine is the only psychedelic that's legal, and it's a good one because it's like 70 to 80%, and even some clinics have in the 90 percentile effectiveness for depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions. The Yale School of Medicine protocol is 6 sessions within 2 to 3 weeks. So like you said, Beth, it sometimes takes more than just a one-off.
Yeah, I went with someone on their ketamine experience, and there was a medical professional there, but it was just a one-off. And to be honest with you, she had such severe childhood trauma for many, many years that it didn't seem like just doing one dose of ketamine made much of a difference.
No.
Let me, should I take over now?
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I think that other, depending on what you're dealing with, and if you have the ability to participate in a clinical trial or go to another country, somebody like your friend who's dealing with severe trauma, I would recommend ibogaine. Ketamine, it's like each compound is different for different things. But
yeah, and we're gonna go through a laundry. We're gonna go through a laundry list of what everything is and what it does as we move towards the second half of the show.
Let me add in something. First of all, ketamine, 2 to 3 weeks is a little too short of a time because you need time for the brain to recalculate itself. So that's why we do a 6-week program. We do 2 the first week, 2 the second week, then 1 or 4-week program, 1 each. Now people say, well, do I have to do this again? Everyone's different. If you need a booster, maybe in a month, maybe 3 months, 6 months, maybe you don't need it at all. So everyone has a different problem. But we look at everything, but we support them with the counseling. Now, I specialize in trauma. I'm a chaplain for the police department in North Miami. I do police officers that have been in shootings. I work with our vets that do come back from Iraq, Afghanistan. So I've been doing it with women that have been molested or raped, and I've been doing that for, 30 years. And the bottom line is I add that into the treatment that we do, and also we make it available that I do a form of EMDR, which is the foundation, but I'm also have a master's in neurolinguistic programming. I'm a hypnotherapist, and I do holotropic breathing. I combine all those modalities together with EMDR, and I give it a trauma in 20 minutes to a half hour. Now, when I tell people that, I said, look, if I don't do it, you can laugh at me, but let me warn you, it's been over 20-something years. No one has ever laughed yet, but you might. I always tell people, please do not believe a word I tell you. Go look things up for yourself. Makes it easier that way, because people don't believe you anyway, and they're scared of something new. So you have to give them more and more information. We educate them about this. We show them what the story is. This is not a one-trip pony, okay? You have to do the whole protocol. You need all the support, okay? And does it work for everybody? Nothing works for everyone, but I can tell you this, it works better than anything I've seen so far.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you can truly, get rid of some, I wrote a whole book called Healing Trauma with Yoga, but there's a part of me that believes, and from my own experience as well, and maybe I just haven't done the right thing yet. So John, I will be coming to your clinic, but there's a part of me that believes that trauma really never gets healed, but we just learn to better mitigate and cope with the daily symptoms that come up.
Well, let me tell you, from what I learned, my experience with trauma, and I deal with I've had people die in my arms. I brought them back to life with CPR. I mean, I've been when you have an addiction treatment center, you deal with everything, from the wealthiest wealthy to the poorest poor. Okay, from every kind of walk of life to every kind of illness. So the bottom line is this: as far as trauma goes, see, most people look at trauma as a critical trauma, like, how about instead of acute trauma, how about subacute? Your boyfriend or your husband cheats on you. You think you got traumatized? The way you look at life is going to change. Your dog dies, okay? You wanted to play tennis and your knee got a knee injury and they can no longer play tennis. Isn't that a trauma? You would be amazed how many people have subacute trauma that affects the way they view their life. And they don't even realize that's what's going on.
It's interesting you should bring that up, because in hindsight over this whole pandemic thing, I realized that I'm pretty traumatized from it for a variety of reasons. Being locked up in an apartment in New York City for 3 months, with the riots across the Brooklyn Bridge outside my window, from, the fear of walking into a building without having a mask on, or everything that, has transpired with my main business during the pandemic. Like that, to me, that's one of the reasons I'm going to Costa Rica, is to kind of try to shake off the past 3 years.
Well, you see, here's what people... Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, trauma becomes a loop that you get stuck in, right? It's like a recurring theme that gets stuck in your default mode network, which is the part of your brain that will just have those 90% of your recurring thoughts. So go ahead, John. I mean, in my experience, it is very possible to rewire that.
Well, here's the deal. Okay, what EMDR does, what psychedelics do, the same thing EMDR does, believe it or not, you get disassociated from the trauma. Now, what does that mean?
Right.
Well, usually what happens is when you're emotionally connected to that trauma, that's when the loop stays. But if you can separate your emotion, disassociate emotionally, and just look at it intellectually, first of all, you realize, question, can you change your past? No. Okay. So what happens in the past? People say, well, I failed. There are no failures, only lessons. The way when you fail is when you quit and you die. There's no more return, see? So these are all lessons. Now, sometimes you have to do the same lesson a number of times, but as long as you keep going, at least you have the opportunity of change. Live in the future, you got anxiety. So most people live in the past, they live in the future, and the present, they don't realize that's how you can change.
And that's what we teach at Yoga Fit, and that's what yoga gives us, is the gift of the presence. John, I have a question about disassociation, and I'm going to relate it to myself. I have been running a business for over 25 years. Through that time, there have been ups, there have been downs, there have been, heartbreaks in terms of, maybe being screwed over by a business partner or an accountant, dropping your account after 7 years, or just, the course of doing business, you sometimes interact with shady people. If you become a master of disassociation and being able to compartmentalize, can you do that so much that you lose touch with having emotions?
No, not at all. First of all, why do you want to hang on to something that doesn't help you? I have an anchor in my car. I can loan you. Can carry that around too while you're at it.
No, but I'm just saying that I mean, and this is again a personal question, but I find that I have gotten so used to whatever the day brings, in particular as it relates to business, that I have somehow lost a lot of my ability to feel on a deeper level, because I've gotten so adept at putting things in a box, putting them up on the shelf, not getting emotionally affected if something happens in business that you don't like. Can you
Well, I
take
can
that
tell you-
disassociation too far?
No, I could tell you that from experience. You haven't read my book. Okay, the kid from the South Bronx who never gave up. I got cheated by my doctor, by my therapist, by another person. Okay, I was homeless when I started. I only went to the 9th grade. I mean, my family was a mafia family. My uncle was a hitman. He threw my wedding at 20. The caterer insulted him in front of the family, so he killed him. I mean, so I have a lot of stuff going on. That book, I wrote it to help motivate people, by the way.
Well,
And
I definitely want to read that book. What's it called?
It's called The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up.
The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. I love that.
Would
You know,
mind
when
if
I saw you speak, I was like, I like this guy. And it says kind of got like a, mafia vibe about it.
That's what my family was. Can I read this? Can I read a couple of
yeah,
sentences?
please do.
There is one thing in this world, one special lesson, one constant that has guided me through the turbulent waters of life. This infinite rule, which most people know but ignore, or who simply do not follow their life lessons. That is, no matter what, no matter the circumstances, the obstacles, the people that get in our way, or things that slow us down, follow this one simple rule. Never give up on your dreams, never let go of your passions, and especially never give up on yourself or a God of your understanding. I was blessed to become extremely successful, and I'd like to share my story with you. This is how my life was transformed and how I was saved from falling into the abyss of hell, and by following this one rule and learning how to have a life worth living. My name is John Giordano, and I'm a recovering addict who turned $300 into $45 million.
Well, that is quite a quote.
Wow.
And quite an impressive story. We're so happy to have you here. You mentioned never give up. You know, there are a lot of people who have suicidal ideation. We had a business consultant whose husband was suffering from this, and he did 6 ketamine treatments, and she said he was like a different person after the 3rd one. So, like I said, I've seen this close enough to home that I'm very curious about it.
My wife suffers from bipolar disorder. She tried to kill herself a few times. She suffers from depression and anxiety. And I watched how, and that's why I went partners with my partner, Sonia and Callie, is because it helped her tremendously. And then I was watching people get help. I was against ketamine in the beginning, about 4 or 5 years ago, when I went to this conference and they were talking about ketamine, how they had an epidemic in Taipei. That's when I was lecturing in Taipei. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to do this ketamine because people are going to get addicted and I don't want to be responsible for that. But then over time, as time goes on, science started showing that it's not true, okay? That's a very, very tiny percentage of people that get caught like that, but it's only with centers that don't really care and just give people ketamine no matter what. And then they get it on the street.
I also want to ask you a quick question, and then Kaia will jump back to you. You mentioned there is an addiction gene. How does a person, like my father was an alcoholic, we're talking, happy hour started at lunchtime and didn't stop. How does one know is there somewhere we can, does 23andMe test this? Where do we go?
No, we have what's called the GARS test. It's called the Genetic Addiction Risk Score test. We can know if you have a mild, moderate, or severe propensity for addiction. Now, it's the main gene. It's not.
Now, is this a written test, or do you actually do genetic testing?
Yes, it's a swab.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank you.
Listen, at the clinic, I'm going to start instituting that too soon. I don't want to give the ladies too much stuff to do. We do NAD+, we do exosome, stem cells. Well, NAD+ is another thing that helps with depression and anxiety. Unbelievable how good it is. Remember, NAD+ is an enzyme that's in every cell of your body. It
because
works with
you're giving IV drips there, so why not give them vitamins too, right?
We do. Well, it's not just a vitamin, it's an enzyme. It works with your mitochondria, which is the engine of your cells.
Right.
See? So with that working, it repairs damaged cells, it gives you energy, plus it works for depression and anxiety. So we give them a drip and then we give them a bottle to take home so they can do it on their own every other
So
day.
what do they do? They just shoot it intramuscularly?
They shoot it right in the fat. Just a little, like a little tiny little needle.
Oh, so it's a subcutaneous
Yeah,
injection.
subcutaneous.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I shoot myself with glutathione and B vitamins once
Yeah,
a
we
week.
do that.
So
We do glutathione. We have
Yeah.
all of that there.
great. Kaia, you're involved in so many businesses around the psychedelic industry. And I know there's some new frontiers coming. Tell us what you're up to there.
Yeah. Well, it is such an exciting time because, for so many years, we haven't been able to study these compounds. We haven't been able to research them. Of course, many of these, plant-based medicines have been around for thousands of years. Indigenous people have known that they're healing. Like, you're going to go work with ayahuasca. There's tribes in the Amazon that call that the medicine. You have cancer, go to the medicine. You're having trouble in your marriage, go to the medicine. It's the medicine. It's the only medicine. But in, our Western world and in the science field, we're just now starting to be able to research and find out how are these molecules affecting the brain, and is the psychedelic experience important? Is it what can we treat with these compounds? And so one thing I am really excited about is this company Psycheceutical that I work with has patented a method of putting a topical cream on the back of the neck at the base of the hairline so that any psychedelic compound just goes directly to the receptors in the brain. Right now, we're doing clinical trials on a ketamine topical cream, about to start clinical trials in Australia for PTSD. And in observational data, it's over 90% of these PTSD patients who really have no life. PTSD is so crippling. And to go through ketamine treatments in a clinic requires a lot of time, it requires a lot of money, but they're getting this incredible relief just by rubbing a topical cream on the back of their neck. They can drive, they can work, they don't have an experience, they just get the brain benefits from it. So this is neurodirect topical ketamine from Psycheceutical. I think that is something that's very promising to think about. How can we use these compounds in different ways, even for children, for the elderly, in ways that don't require an experience.
And hasn't the pharmaceutical industry jumped in and they're offering some ketamine nasal spray? Am I correct in that?
Well, the company Janssen Pharmaceuticals, that's owned by Johnson & Johnson, has Spravato. It's a nasal spray. So, ketamine is not something you can patent. It's a very readily available crystal.
And tell us its origins, because I have friends that are veterinarians, and from what I understand, it was originally used to, I don't know, something with animals, right?
It's a tranquilizer. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's an anesthesia for humans, for animals. If you give any living being enough ketamine, they're going to go to sleep. So it's very common in for veterinarians, and it's very common in surgery because it's the anesthesia with the least amount of side effects. But then when we're using it in, a therapeutic sense, like Dr. John is in his clinic, or like my company, KetaMD, doing at-home treatments with ketamine lozenges, you're getting like not a high enough dose that you fall asleep, but a low dose that puts you in a dissociative state. So like, John mentioned, you re-examine your traumas from a dissociated perspective, or you just get the brain benefits, like the extra neuroplasticity and quieting the default mode network. But ketamine, because it can't be patented, in order for pharmaceutical companies to make money from it, they had to come up with what's called a mirror molecule, which just means that in a lab, they recreated a exact replica of ketamine, but it's a different compound that they can patent. And so
they want to do that with psilocybin too, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Oh yes, a lot of research being done on mirror molecules of psilocybin.
And the minute I'm sure that they do that, it's going to be legal everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole process that's happening. They have to make the molecule, then they have to figure out what it treats, and then they have to go through many phases of clinical trials before they get to FDA approval. So that's happening with many different compounds right now.
And let's also jump to MDMA, because from what I understand, and I read a book a long time ago called Ecstasy, it was originally designed so therapists could use it on their clients so that they could relive trauma again without having the emotional load around the trauma. Is that correct?
Well, it also was a very sexual drug.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
It was also
Well,
a very sexual drug.
Okay.
I
Uh,
mean, I have to disagree. While you were having the MDMA experience, it's not actually very sexual. Perhaps later or after, it creates a lot of heart opening and connection. Not
And a lot of
necessarily
introspection
sex,
too.
so.
And a lot of
But
introspection
yes,
too.
well,
But I guess it
But let
depends
me-
on the
I think-
individual.
that's why they
yes,
had
of course.
problems with it, because what happened, some of these therapists were unethical. Well, you know the stories, okay? People
Very
open up
heart
their
opening. You're
heart.
very open.
Yeah, you're very
So
open, and that's why I
yeah,
said it was a sexual drug too. Okay,
yes.
listen, I'm from the 60s. I did all these drugs. I'm 76 years old, so I know I'm older than the both of you. So I experienced this firsthand when it first came out. It was MDA, not MDMA. And the guy from Canada was the guy who invented that, who happened to live next door to me. So I was doing a lot of that.
Probably was a good neighbor to have in those
Great
days.
neighbor to have at the time, not now. So, listen, here's my bias. I see the pharmaceutical companies want to get in this because they know it's going to hurt their business, because the SSRIs and all that stuff, the Mayo inhibitors are not working. People are committing suicide. They make thousands and thousands of dollars off of this stuff. So they try to take out the essence of these drugs, like the psychedelic experience. I think that's very important to enter into the mind. Okay, yeah, we can get these molecules, and yes, you can reset this or reset that, but I think if you take out the essence of something, you're missing something.
I would agree with that. And probably just to make these substances widely available to people without having the proper coaching and guidance to set intentions, to do integration, to create a new way of being is rather reckless.
There's no
Well,
short.
we have scientists that are looking at traumatic brain injury, dementia, Alzheimer's. If they can find something in a psilocybin molecule that can treat these things that we've had no treatments for, I'm just saying that this is a new breakthrough in science, that we can finally study these compounds. And the psychedelic experience, I'm a huge fan of it. It's healed me in many, many ways, but it's not necessary for everything. I think it's great for everyone. I want everybody to have a psychedelic experience.
Well,
but
I think the world might need that now.
Well, here's the thing that you said, there is no treatment. That's not true. There is a treatment. And the treatment is called hyperbaric medicine. It's one of the things I lecture about. Dr. Paul Hartz out of Louisiana is the leading scientist in this. He's the one that went to the Senate and got to approve wound healing and hyperbarics, right, for the VA. Him and Dr. Williamson, who I also work with. Now, hyperbarics actually fixes traumatic brain injuries.
Is that just basically going for a hyperbaric oxygen tank?
Yes, oxygen under pressure becomes a medicine, and it has to be. I got one in my home. That's how much I believe.
Do you use it?
Of course.
How often?
Well, now we just got a new one. Okay, somebody be using it now. Israel just did a study, 5 times a week, atmosphere of 2. Okay, oxygen concentrators. All right, for 3 months, it grows your telomeres.
Oh wow!
By 20%.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So what it does, I saw
Sign me up.
people, with Dr. Hart, people they said they couldn't walk anymore, people that had PTSD no longer have PTSD, but the pharmaceutical companies don't want it. I'll tell you why. First of all, it's very inexpensive to run, number one. Number two, if VA, they charge $4,000 per client for medication. Now, Dr. Hartz, Dr. Williamson, I think it was in Oklahoma, they got a bill passed in the Senate to use this in the VA. And then when they got down to funding it, they said, the appropriations department said, oh, we don't have any money for that.
Meaning someone got paid off under the table, yeah?
Really? Do you think that works in our government?
Yeah, it's very sad when the things, and we're not even talking about taking a substance, we're talking about putting somebody in an oxygen chamber, but we have gotten really off topic. This could be a whole nother show just on telomere length. So I'm going to notate that for my show booker. Let's jump back to new breakthroughs in mental health. And it sounds like the oxygen chamber. I'm going to recommend that to a friend whose husband has a really bad TBI. So thank you for that. Kaia, what's the future of this industry?
Well, you were asking about MDMA and we got a little bit off track, but I've had a chance to interview Rick Doblin on my podcast and spend time with him. And so I would say, you know, based on what I've heard from him on the results of the MAPS clinical trials, now MDMA, they're anticipating FDA approval in 2024, early 2024. Looks like that's going to be the first psychedelic that will, you know, besides ketamine, that will have that FDA approval. I imagine psilocybin will closely follow. You know, now there's all these clinical trials happening. It's a long process. It's actually a several-year process to go through.
And what classifies something as a psychedelic?
That is a really excellent question. And actually, you know, there's compounds like ketamine that are a dissociative, and that's very different than a compound like peyote that is hallucinogenic. So the word psychedelic is a larger umbrella term that basically just means you're having an extra sensory experience in the brain. But we're still
so,
learning,
you know,
what does it mean?
meditation could be then considered psychedelic, yeah?
I mean, certainly if you listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza and he talks about, you know,
Love Joe
activating
Dispenza.
the pineal gland through certain types of meditation, he says it's the same thing that you would get through a psychedelic experience.
Right.
So,
And I've had
yes.
some breathwork experiences that have been, you know,
Oh, me too.
quite beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, very psychedelic breathwork experiences
Yeah.
for sure. So I think there's a difference between like the psychedelic experience, which doesn't necessarily require a compound. For example, I'll just tell you, I was in Santa Monica a few days ago trying this treatment at a place called the Reality Center. You lie on a bed, it vibrates with different frequencies. They give you music to synchronize your brain waves and through a journey of different brain waves, and they flash these lights around you also at different frequencies. And it stimulates a psychedelic experience without any compound. And it was amazing. So I think the psychedelic experience is different than, you know, what makes a compound a psychedelic, which has more to do with the effect on the brain.
Thank you for clarifying that. So we've got about 7 minutes left in the show. Would you each give our listeners just some, you know, fact-based information on the things that you specialize in? And again, if they are interested, if they have loved ones that are severely depressed, have had trauma, like how do you find a reputable institute to go to? What are next steps for everyone listening to this show?
You want to go first?
I'll go first. You know, I think that what Dr. John is doing with a ketamine clinic is wonderful if you have one in your community and you can afford it. And many of them have payment plans. Some of them are starting to find ways to accept insurance. It's great. Ketamine is really an excellent option for people. But I co-founded a company called KetaMD that provides ketamine over telemedicine guided by a nurse. The nurse will send you a blood pressure cuff. The nurse will take your blood pressure. The nurse will be there on Zoom. You'll also have someone in the home. And sometimes when people are dealing with depression, it's pretty hard to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And also, you know, these telemedicine platforms are more affordable. So if ketamine treatment sounds like something you want to learn more about, you know, ask around, look at the reviews, make sure you're going to a reputable place. And then just, you know, look into other psychedelics like Beth is talking about doing an ayahuasca journey in Costa Rica. Dr. John and I both have experience with ibogaine, which I feel is the most powerful one for anyone dealing with addiction.
Can you take a minute just to talk about what ibogaine is? I've heard about it.
Yes,
I've read about it. I was actually going to do it a few years ago, but they didn't have medical supervision, so I backed out.
You want me to talk about that, Kaia?
You please do. You're the expert.
Yeah, ibogaine is a bush from West Africa run by the Weedy tribe. They use it for a rite of passage. There was a gentleman called Howard Lutzoff, was a heroin addict who came to Gabron in West Africa to get a new high. He took Ibogaine and he woke up the next morning detoxed and without any cravings. So he said, wow, well, let me see what I could do with this. So he opened up a clinic in Panama. That's when he got Dr. Bash, who's a neuromolecular scientist from the University of Miami School of Medicine and the head of the brain bank there, to go in with him. But, you know, addicts, just because they quit drugs and alcohol doesn't mean the behaviors change. So she left there and opened up in St. Kitts. Now, what Ibogaine does, okay, it's an amazing medicine. It actually blocks the opioid receptor sites, so we can get rid of the cravings, and it detoxes heroin addicts and alcoholics 24 hours, which is unheard of.
So why aren't they using this at these, like, you know, 3-day detox centers here in the US?
Okay, because it's illegal. It's a Schedule
It's
1
not
drug,
legal.
and it's,
Yeah.
you know, and let me tell you what the story is. The way they judge a Schedule 1 drug, that means it's highly addictive. I promise you, you do not want to do Ibogaine. Because
Yeah, I heard
Never
it's a
again.
very rough ride.
it's a rough ride. But let me tell you, it's a very thorough rough ride. And I've seen people change dramatically with this. Imagine somebody coming in on 10 bags of heroin, like on a nod, all right, doesn't even know where he's at. All of a sudden, within 24 hours, he comes out like, who is this person?
So it changes, obviously it changes your
It changes the way
brain.
you look at life. What it does actually, you go back into your childhood, let's say as an adult, and you have what is known as a cathartic experience, and you revisit all your traumas, okay, as an adult, looking at it from an adult point of view. Remember, children are wonderful observers, lousy interpreters, because they don't have the experience to interpret things. So
But the body holds on to, the thing is that the body holds on to the trauma.
Right.
your trauma is not only in your brains. That's where people get confused. It's in your
No,
heart,
it's in
Your
everything.
cells.
your body.
Yeah.
So you have to address everything. And that's why people.
And where does the vagus nerve play into all of these different different substances that you're both talking about?
The vagus nerve is, which is really interesting. What happens with serotonin and dopamine, 90% is manufactured in your gut, okay, goes up the vagus nerve, okay, and deposits it into your brain. So what you have to look at, if your vagus nerve is not functioning properly, which they have ways of testing to see if your vagus nerve is working properly also, okay, and you have the addiction gene, so now you're shortchanged everywhere, okay? So, you know, all these substances, when done, I believe they should leave the psychedelic part alone. You know, if it's not broke, why you want to fix it?
Well, and I want to, we're 2 minutes to the close of the show, and we certainly could use like another 4 shows on these topics. But like you said, intention is everything.
It's everything.
Having the right intention, whether you're taking mushrooms or going to a ketamine clinic, if your intention is to serve your highest good and get the healing that you need, that's a good first step. Yeah.
Absolutely. See, and
Yeah,
it's not as
definitely.
expensive. It's not that expensive to do the ketamine with us, for instance. First of all, we have financing, we have credit cards, and people are suffering. And how much they spend in a year with co-payments on their medications.
Oh, and listen, medications, food addictions, alcohol, going out, getting drunk, that all costs money. So tell our listeners where they can find you both. And I think we're going to need to revisit this topic again.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's so much to talk about.
There really is so much
but
to unpack.
We're just a tip of the iceberg. But if you'd
Yeah.
like to follow me on social media, you can find me at Kaia Roman Author on Instagram and Facebook, at Kaia Roman on Twitter. Find me on LinkedIn, Kaia Roman, KaiaRoman.com to see, all the things I'm involved with. Psychoceutical, I definitely recommend checking out, what this company is doing. Ketamine, you can download from the App Store.
Wonderful. Thank you. And check out her book, The Joy Plan. It's great. I have it.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You
Dr.
can
John,
go-
where can we find you?
All the social media is the same as Kai. Then also go to John, the initial J, Giordano.com,
Wonderful.
Giordano.com. You see all my books. You'll see television shows, radio shows, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you've got an amazing story. I want to thank you both so much. I'm so happy I went to the conference. I'm so happy I met you both. And I feel very grateful that we're able to share this information with our listeners, again, especially those people who are truly suffering, whether it's from addiction or depression, PTSD,
Absolutely.
or trauma. There is hope. And I hope that this show gave you more hope. So thank you both so much. Namaste.
Thanks.
We'd like to thank our
Thank you so
sponsor,
much.
yogafit.com, the leader in yoga fit mind body education. You can check us out online at yogafit.com. Find me on Instagram, Beth Shaw Health, and I'll probably be taking a trip over to John's clinic in the month of April. So I'll look forward to seeing you in person again. And Kaia, you'll be in Florida in April. So
I will. Let's go together.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. We'll have a girls' trip. All right. Thank you both so much. In the meantime, everyone stay healthy, stay happy, stay educated, and namaste. There is hope.
All clear. Great job today, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. I'm so sorry about my glitch.
Yeah, we've never had that happen.
Everything.
We've never had a
Oh my
guest drop out
God.
before. You're the first.
You can't say that anymore.
All right. Well, we'll all keep in touch for sure. Thank you again. Have a beautiful rest of your Wednesday.
Thank
Get
you.
my
It was
book.
great.
You're going to really enjoy the book.
I'm going to get the book and I'm going to come and see you, and I'm going to get some ketamine. And yeah, once I'm done with my ayahuasca, my liver's a little cleaner. It'll be a good time.
Oh my God, have such an amazing time.
Before you would do
I
it.
have a liver cleanse from my friends who own globalhealing.com, and I will
Okay.
definitely do that before I come in.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to hear how it goes, how the
Yeah.
retreat
See
is
you
for
again.
you. And I'll see you both in April.
Yeah, well, we'll all get together in
I'm
April.
definitely down to go get all the exosomes, NAD plus. the
Yeah,
hyperbaric. Give me everything.
let's do it.
Load me up.
My one thing,
Yeah.
I did hyperbaric once in New York, and I have claustrophobia, and the attendant said she'd be there, and then she was gone, and my ears started to pop.
Oh,
And I was banging on the thing, and I don't know if it caused me more trauma than
not supposed to
help.
leave you alone. No.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I just that ear thing reminded me of when I was in college and I was taking scuba diving in the Atlantic Ocean. And
Well, all you got to do is turn it down a little bit to your ears, formalize, and then you can go back.
would I have
And
control
so
over
do
that
you have
myself?
hyperbaric in your clinic?
I know I have it in my home.
Oh.
Okay.
Actually, it came
I
right.
guess
out.
we're going to
Your house
John. We're
to
going
do
to
it.
John's house for lunch.
We're going to your
All right. Thank you both so much.
guys.
I look forward to seeing you both in
Thank you so
April.
much.
All right. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.